From Del Rio, Texas, home of Lake Amistad, your host, Rob Wade. This guy who dives. This episode of This Guy Who Dives, recorded live 5 March 2016, episode 156. It's not for everyone. Well, welcome everybody once again to another exciting episode of This Guy Who Dives, and I am your host, Rob Wade, and sorry for the slight delay due to technical difficulties. The folks that write the software that we do the podcast, the netcast with, XSplit, they had a new version, what they called a maintenance update. I should learn by now that when somebody has a maintenance update, that there's probably going to be some issues. Usually I find that they fix a couple of things and break several more. And so as it turns out, they broke actually part of the camera subsystem. So when I was trying to get the netcast prep, doing all the pre-show, I couldn't get one of my main cameras. We run 3 cameras here. Of course, we got the one that's trained on the full view. So if we have, no matter how many people I have up here, I can cover the whole area just by zooming in and out the camera. So this is the full shot that you see here. And then if we had a co-host, I would have that camera trained on him or her specifically. So like when Bobby Love guests, I have it trained on her, but when we don't have a co-host, I end up having it switched to this angle where you can see just adds a little space to the view. And then of course, then you have the camera that's zoomed in on me. So what I am noticing, well, first off, I had a problem getting all the cameras to work correctly. First, I had one that went completely blank on me. It was just black screen. It was running. I could see the lights on the camera. So we use Microsoft's the LifeCam. We use 2 LifeCam studio cameras for the co-host, and then the wide view, the full range, full. Great. Hold on. Let me pick up. One of our dogs wants up. Here's Graza. You want to say hi to everyone? Well, you're just really close. You afraid of the microphone? Afraid of the microphone? There you go. Good girl. Right, let's see if I can tuck you back here, because I've already got Ronan back here. It's a battle of who gets here first. I only have room for 2 dogs behind me, and it truly is first come, first serve. So, anyway, so one of the 2 LifeCam studio cameras are used for the close-ups because they have much better resolution on Zoom, and then the wide full shot. This one is a What are you trying to do? Turn around the other direction. The LifeCam Cinema. They put me on the edge of my seat. LifeCam Cinema is what we use for the widescreen because it can't zoom in like the other 2 can. They're both high-def cameras capable of all the way up to 1080p HD video shooting, but we run it at 720 because of throughput, etc. And it really makes as it is, basic HD at 720 makes the file, because it's just recording while we're shooting or while we're live streaming, makes it really huge as it is. It's a couple of gigabytes. So I'm watching the big screen over here to make sure it looks okay. So anyway, So I had first, one of the studio cameras wouldn't come up at all, even though the lights on each of the webcams were showing me that it was actually getting a signal. and I could make adjustments to it, but just wasn't resulting in anything. So I removed the camera, added it back in, and then it would only show it in standard definition. Even though I was configuring it, I could configure the software to show me the full 720 or even 1080 resolution, but it just wasn't changing it. So I tried getting out of the actual software and starting it back up. No improvement. Finally, I got to the point where after fixing all the other things that was showing up as wrong with it, I ended up having to completely reboot the computer, which with all the stuff that loads on this main machine took a bit to do. So that caused me to be delayed in actually starting the netcast. So I apologize for that delay. But when you run on a shoestring budget, literally, and you're trying to make all these things come together while doing other things. Not, this is not sponsored by anybody. It's totally self-funded. Where have we heard that before? Actually, it is. Unlike Donald Trump, we are totally self-funded here. Donald Trump keeps trying to play I am the only candidate that's self-funded. Well, the fact is he is not self-funded. If you go to his website, he's got a big old donate button on there. So yeah, he's receiving money. And oh, by the way, he has got a lot. Matter of fact, he has practically circulating loans going on with a number of big banks. So don't let his blathering on about being self-funded and not being owned by banks, etc. Oh, he's got millions and billions of dollars. That's true, but he's also leveraged like crazy too. So and has been all his life. So we can play the game all day long, but he's full of himself and full of BS. And thankfully, I was glad to see that the candidate that I am in favor of, Ted Cruz, actually pulled off a win in Kansas and in Maine. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to grab Kentucky. Not sure what's going on with the people in Kentucky, but I think the polls are still open, or maybe just closed in Louisiana. So we'll be following that. But looks like Ted's doing pretty decent. So anyway. Title of the episode tonight is It's Not For Everyone. I got into a discussion, and I'm noticing some jerkiness in the camera here probably because of all the settings. I'm going to have to continue to tweak this puppy to get it to work right. I'm trying to focus. There we go. Wow, the white balance seems like really off. I'm really harsh. I have not been out in the sun today. As a matter of fact, I've hardly been outside at all today, which is disappointing. It was really kind of drizzly most of the day, unfortunately. See if I can lighten this up just a little bit. Work the contrast some. There we go. So it was kind of drizzly most of the day, and just didn't really feel like going out and doing anything, but focusing on stuff that I need to do here. As a matter of fact, you may have noticed a little bit of a difference of the studio when we started up. I have a massive keyboard rig here. Well, at times I've actually had my older Roland keyboard controller down here that I use in studio work. So if I'm working on music for a show, the upstagers, or just practicing for stuff for our praise and worship team or the Christian band I'm in, that's the one I use for practicing and for writing and arranging. But my old M Audio Keystation Pro 88 that I use as my primary rig at church and band and all over the place, it is pushing 10 years old, and really is. I've got keys that aren't working correctly, barely press, and it keeps rebooting, or I have phantom notes that play all by themselves. I can walk away from the keyboard. It's like it's possessed. It was finally biting the dust, and so we made the investment to get a replacement controller. But, of course, the challenge you have there is I have to relearn everything to do with this thing. So it does things very differently from the way my M Audio does, and does some things better, does some things not as well. And so I'm still teaching myself what its real limitations are, what its full strengths are. It's well reviewed out there on YouTube, etc., for what it does well. But the things that I'm trying to get it to do, nobody seems to be wanting to do, or they're not using it that way. So it's a challenge, I got to tell you. And I'm a technical person. I'm not afraid to dig into configurations and software, stuff like that. You know, if you're a Windows aficionado, I ain't afraid to get into the registry of Windows and do stuff. I've done tons of stuff, so I'm not afraid of that on this Arturia Keylab 88 controller workstation. But it's just brand new, so it's a new way of going through things. So, and then I'm going back and forth with the software with the company and some of the other OEMs that provide some of the other software for this. Going back and forth with them on the registration of their software. It's kind of user spiteful. So, you know what? So this is a lesson to you folks out there, you companies out there that write software in support of computers and keyboards and other technical equipment. Make your registration and activation process much easier. I understand you're trying to prevent piracy, but there's got to be a better way to do it than the way companies like UVI and Piano Tech are doing it. It's just, this is painful, and Ableton too, very painful. So, all right, so that's off that soapbox. So let me jump into, first of all, movie review. One of the movies I've been, matter of fact, let me jump to my movie list. Okay, so of the movies that I had talked about the first episode of the year that I wanted to see, and here we are going into March, was 400 Days, 13 Hours, The Fifth Wave, Terminus, Synchronicity, Deadpool, and Risen. And now we're into the March. Eye in the Sky and Allegiant, one of the next movie in the Divergent series, should be coming out this month. Of those, I had seen 13 Hours, The Fifth Wave. Risen still had not arrived here. As a matter of fact, let me see if it even is in Del Rio yet. Having been the second weekend that it was open. Check the old Cinemark app here. I literally have not been out. I've been working on this. Oh, good grief. Yes, you can use my location settings. Oh, I did because there was a new update, jumping sort of into the technical stuff. There was a new update for Windows Phone last week, or Windows Mobile last week, and I loaded it and it created all sorts of problems, so I ended up doing a hard reset. So, and while that's a slow process, it's not a difficult one because everything it reinstalls automatically. But you have to sign back into your various apps and set the settings like location, etc. So let's check show times. Oh, Risen is playing in Del Rio. Shocker of shockers. So I guess I have an idea what we may be going to see tomorrow evening is Risen. So I'll be able to give you a review of that next week. That should be cool. So anyway, have not seen Deadpool yet. While people are giving it, saying it's a really fun movie, that it is really, really not suitable for children. And apparently, a lot of people are bringing their children to see this. Okay, I get it's a Marvel Comics movie, but not all of the Marvel comics were for your average person. Some of them were adult type. So let's just say that it's probably not appropriate to bring your kids to that. So not sure if I'll get to see that or not. But anyway, haven't seen Terminus yet, even though that was supposedly out in January. Haven't seen Synchronicity yet, even though that was out in January. I did get to see 400 Days, but again, it's not available in theaters around here. But if you've got Vudu, if you've got a Vudu account, you can actually rent a lot of movies that are currently out at the theaters. Depends on the publisher or I guess publisher, distributor, what they allow. But we did get to rent and watch 400 Days. So what I'm going to do is play for you a little bit of the trailer so you can see. So what was interesting about this, it's kind of an experiment. In order to prepare for a long-distance
at its core,
space
it's
trip.
A social experiment designed to test the psychological effects of deep space travel.
Interestingly,
We have liftoff.
you can see it's a Sci-Fi Channel movie, and a number of people that are part of that network were in this. The guy from Defiance was the narrator there. You see Brandon Routh and can't remember her name, that are both in Legends of Tomorrow.
What you see, it's all part of the simulation.
This isn't what we signed up for.
Am I the only sane one here?
Something is very wrong out there.
What the hell is that?
Delusions, memory loss, hallucinations.
Anything is possible.
Maybe this is just a nightmare.
I'm ready to wake up.
I don't know what happened.
Doesn't make any sense.
And of course the guy from Dr. Wells from The Flash.
Open up that hatch. We all lose.
Katie Lotz, yeah. Okay, so it was the trailer kind of set you up nicely for some stuff. It was entertaining. My wife and I watched it. We went and watched it. It was entertaining. It was kind of, okay, what really is going on here? But I got to say, I didn't like the ending because it didn't actually resolve anything. I don't want to give it away in case you do get a chance to see it or rent it or whatever, but it was kind of interesting. Now, so I would give it probably a 7. I'd give it a 7. Kind of interesting psychological study because they basically had to spend the full 400 days there. But in the fashion of The Martian, where they were covering the whole time that the main character was on Mars waiting for rescue, trying to keep himself alive. They kind of had to jump ahead at different points to see how things were progressing. So you got a real interesting psychological study and learned more about their past, etc. So it was, I was again, the ending kind of made that part suck for me. So I'd say about a 7.5 for that. Now, in a related topic, I was talking about how you see all these sci-fi. Now, the same company that owns CBS owns CW and Sci-Fi. So you'll see a lot of actors show up crossing the lines there. It's why you have in 400 Days, you have 2 people who were on the Green Arrow, or the Arrow, and then also showed up on The Flash. And then you have a cast member from The Flash and also from Defiance, which was another sci-fi show that finally got canceled, although it did actually have sort of an ending to it. You see all those folks on there. But, in one of the latest episodes of The Arrow, they had the kid who plays Oliver Queen's son had an action figure of the Flash because he and his mom live in Central City. Where the Flash is. And then when they discover, when he discovers, he gets to see the Green Arrow, he decides, I don't like the Flash anymore. I like the Green Arrow. So, as it turns out, I found that Walmart actually does have those figures that they used in the show. So, here you have the Flash from the TV series, which is pretty cool. And you have the Arrow from the TV series. So, I have officially added to my DC collection those characters, which is funny, is because I kind of have a friendly rivalry going with one of the senior master sergeants that I work with on the base. He is a big Marvel guy. I'm a DC guy, although I will admit that Marvel is doing their whole franchise correctly. DC totally sucks at it, and it was never more apparent than the latest episode of Supergirl. It's sad. It's sad. They have an opportunity to create some continuity, and they're not even bothering. It's all about, hey, can we get the most money to do this character, that movie, or this show? And so there's no effort to integrate everything compared to Marvel, which integrates their entire ecosystem to some degree or another. So anyway, off that soapbox. So anyway, let me get back to my show notes here. So 400 days, I give a 7 to 7.5. And okay, so moving on to our tech news. I did mention that there was an update for the Windows 10 mobile that created some issues that that have created some pain for me. One, not the least of which, is a feature that I desperately rely on, and that's Cortana being being much more alive, if you will. I have her on all the time. I don't have it set to only use on headphones or Bluetooth. I have it set on all the time. So what's supposed to happen is if I get an incoming text, for instance, she announces, I've got it configured where she announces to me, you have a text from such and such. Do you want to hear it or whatever, or ignore? So I typically will hear it, and it's great because it's hands-free. And then you get asked, would you like to reply, or I'm done? And I can reply, and all of it is all hands-free. Well, she no longer announces that I have a text, and so does not give me an opportunity to listen to or reply. So, and that's even after the hard reset. So they've totally broken Cortana on the Windows 10 mobile. So just one of my million reasons why Windows 10 mobile sucks. Now, they also just recently, for insiders, released a new build of the Windows 10 for PCs, tablets, notebooks, build 14279. Not a lot added there, but they did expand the number of languages for Cortana. So they're trying to catch Cortana up on the PC to what you can do on the phone, or what you could do on the phone. They integrated the logon and lock screen backgrounds. Up to this point, the background for the logon screen, you set it and that at a different place, and a matter of fact, I noticed that it kept reverting back no matter what I changed it to. So what they've done is they've pulled it all together in the same setting that you do for lock screen. It also, you can change it for your logon background as well. So when you first boot up the machine, you have just the background for logging on. You can have it use the same picture. So for instance, I have my lock screen set to use the Bing picture of the day. So now my logon screen matches that. Pardon me, I had to get a little bit libation. So I've got that set up. And that works okay so far. Let's see. They have added the SMS message, text, you got text messages. Well, now they've started to pull together the messaging Skype apps from both the mobile and the PC, so that you can click on the messaging app and you can see conversations that you have on your phone. What has not been activated yet, and supposedly it's coming, is you'll be able to respond. So it will, because you can basically it's kind of backing up your text conversations and then making it available, that backup available to you via your PC. So the idea being that eventually, when they flip the switch for this capability, you would be able to do all your text messaging via your PC. You already can through the Hey Cortana. So if you say Hey Cortana, send a text to such and such, then what it really does is it. Oh, I'm sorry, she heard me. Let me kill that. Somebody complaining when to get up here? No, they're dreaming back there. So anyway, if you say if you say Cortana, then to do a text, it will do a text and then it passes it onto your phone to actually send it. So they're slowly getting that together. So that'll be kind of convenient, so you don't actually have to have your phone to do text. It just uses your account to do that. Let's see. Also they've added the ability to simply tell Cortana to remember things or to do items without having to actually set a date. So you can just say, Cortana, remind me to call my wife or something like that. And it will set a reminder for that without necessarily putting a specific date and time on it. So just a few things that they're expanding, adding, but not a lot right now. Most of the work being done with is kind of in the background. But again, that's for the insiders to get. So if you're not an insider, which you can easily do, you don't have to go through a lot of special hoops to do it. So if you want the most advanced version of Windows 10 to test things out, test capabilities out, you can just join the insider program and piece of cake, and you will start getting more frequent updates to builds to your system. But just be warned, if you do that, it can take a lot of time because it literally is updating your whole operating system to a new version or subversion or whatever they're going to call it. So, all right, let's see. A good friend of mine, Philip, has been doing a little bit of diving out at Lake Amistad. I just haven't had time because I've got so many things going on right now. And just the weather's not been conducive to me for diving on the days that I've had the free time to do so. But he went out there Monday, and he said visibility was really, really bad. It's only about 5 feet with high turbidity. He was like me, hoping that winter would bring about much better visibility, but this year it just hasn't been the case. We had this monstrous storm. You might have heard about it on the news. We had a monstrous storm that came through here, messed a lot of things up, and it just really sent a lot of water, etc., and silt, etc., into our lake. And it's been just very windy lately because we've been having one front after another come through. And usually when we get these fronts come through the way the temperatures have been now, it really churns up the water. So high turbidity is the end result. He said that the lake temperature is right now about 54 degrees. That's pretty much the normal temp for this lake during the winter. And the lake level is been steady. He sent me a picture of it, and it looks pretty much the same as it was about 4 weeks ago when I was out there. But just so you guys can get an idea what it is like diving out there, especially my favorite spot out at Castle Canyon, I have a little bit of a highlight reel for you guys to look at diving at Castle Canyon. And this one, visibility is pretty decent, so hang on to your hats here, folks. Yeah, it's kind of hanging up here. Let's see if it catches up. There we go. So here's the thing, the title of the episode today is, or tonight is, it's not for everyone. And I'm going to go through a list of reasons why you should try scuba diving, or reasons why you might not. One of the reasons of the why not that I don't have on there, that I have had a few people tell me about, is they're scared of the fish. They just don't like the idea of fish coming around them. Now, I will say at Lake Amistad, you typically don't see a lot of fish unless you go to certain spots. Castle Canyon, because it is a straight drop of a couple of 100 feet, you probably are only going to see catfish as you're hanging around the various crevices and mini caves of the area of the canyon. There I am at 62 feet. You see the visibility is pretty decent. It's about 25 or 30 feet right there. And if you see any other fish, it's going to be typically maybe a pretty good size school of white bass, because they tend to hang in pretty large schools. That is the kind of a thrilling or disconcerting experience if you suddenly are swarmed by a school of white bass. There, I'm at 78 feet, so you can see it's getting darker, and that can be a downer too for people if being able to see is critical for them. Visibility can definitely negatively impact it. And this is what you see here is exactly why I tell divers to the area, if you've not been diving out here, even during a day dive, you want to carry a light with you. You really do. Even if it's just a little backup BC light. Feet. So you can see I got the glow in the dark display. Get the light going there. Shining on my two dive buddies I was diving with. I tell you, this is my favorite place to dive. My second favorite are the cliffs over by Spur 454. So here I am at 92 feet, and you can see a fair way up there. Like I said, visibility, it was about 30 feet, 25, 30 feet there. And the cool thing there at Castle Canyon is that there are a couple of little cavelets, if you will, that you can get into, but they're not really enclosed, so you can't get really trapped in them. I'm starting to check out one of the little caves. You can hear my computer beeping at me, telling me that I'm within 10 minutes of my max time. It's one of the things I really, really love about the dive computers is they give you that signal. And again, adding to the darkness is because it is, even though it's a sheer drop, the rocks are not completely flat, so there are overhangs, etc. So once you go underneath one of those, you lose any of the light that's filtering from above. So you can see I'm inside one of the little cavelets, and there's like a little window, or I'm going around a spire that's sticks up in from the bottom of this little cavelet. So if I wanted to, I could swim through. I'm looking out at my buddies on the outside there. Again, there's really no way you can get trapped in there. I suppose if I tried to swim through there, I was actually big enough or small enough to fit through that if I wanted to. But I suppose if you were bigger, you could get stuck there. Checking my air pressure, which you should do often. Signaling them, see how they were doing. See some fish hanging above us. A little school of white bass. There we go. So that is one of my favorite places to dive. There and Spur 454. I'm hoping, since I now know a number of divers with boats, that I'm going to have an opportunity this summer to hit some of those, hit Castle Canyon several times this year, so I can get some more video for you guys and just experience the dive. I love that place so much. I just hope that visibility gets better this year, because this last year it was generally bad. It was not like this most of the year, which is a shame. So if that doesn't scare you, I got my TV system still getting loud. We dropped the volume down. So if that doesn't scare you off, let's talk about some reasons why you would want to try scuba diving if you've never done it, and then also, let's be fair, because it isn't for everyone, reasons why you might not. So bring up our slideshow here. So why should I dive? Well, first off, because it's a new experience. There is nothing... This is as different of an experience for you as skydiving would be. It's unique in what you experience physically. It's like flying, but just in slow motion. Okay? So it is the one way that you can experience that moving in three-dimensional travel under your own power. And it's an amazing experience to... And I tell you, there is no camera that can do justice to actually being there, experiencing that weightlessness, the feeling of being very small, but interacting with the sea life there. It's just amazing. Swim through history. if you get opportunities to go to places where there are a lot of wrecks, and they don't necessarily have to be the kinds that truly were a real wreck. In other words, there was a storm that caused the ship to sink, although that's amazing all by itself. But even the things that they have intentionally prepared and made safe for sea life and made safe for the ecosystem have intentionally sunk as man-made reefs and dive attractions for people. That is history. Those vessels, those aircraft, whatever you find down there, whatever you can swim around and through, has history to it. One of the newer wrecks that Tara and I have been diving on, and that we're hoping to again this year for our dive trip, is the Vandenberg. And I've shared with you before that's got a pretty interesting history. It was one of the Air Force's ships at one point, which you're thinking, okay, why would the Air Force have ships? But, you know, they fire missiles, they launch satellites, they track satellites, etc. And so, you know, having a ship that can actually track that stuff is, you know, it's just another function, another feature that they take advantage of, another capability. But prior to its final retirement, it saw action in the movie Virus with Donald Sutherland and Jamie Lee Curtis. And so it was kind of rigged for that. As a matter of fact, the video I've shown from that trip, our first dive on it, it had only been sunk a month when we dove on it. You see a number of it was in the movie, it was a Russian satellite / communication ship. And so you see a number of the leftover Russian lettering and signs and stuff like that on there. So it's pretty cool. So, but the opportunity to literally swim through history is available to you in a way that you cannot experience typically anywhere else other than scuba diving. Okay, so you get to join a new community. There's something unique about the diving community. Now, we have a variety of people in the dive community that are various personality types. You'll have the tree huggers to the ultra conservatives. You have people who've been diving since before they had even gauges to tell you how much air was in your tank, to the uber tech diver who've been diving with rare mixed gases and penetrated caves and real, you know, serious wrecks and things like that. But you're sharing an experience with a community of people that is still pretty unique around the world. You will meet so many new people and share so many interesting stories and experience with them. I tell you, we always have a great time when we go scuba diving or go on our dive trips, because we end up usually if we're staying in a in a hotel with other divers, we have an opportunity to eat dinners and breakfasts with those folks and do different things and just generally just share the experience. And you go out on dives with them and you get to kind of see different people's gear and styles and things like that. And it's a unique and fun opportunity. So it is easier than you think. A lot of people think, oh, I can never scuba dive. Thing is, it really isn't difficult. There are some things which we'll get into in the why not category that you need to consider, but it really is very easy to do. If you've gone snorkeling, if you enjoy snorkeling, it is so much easier to do this than snorkeling. Breathing off of a regulator is about as easy as it gets compared to trying to suck air through a tube that you're pulling from the surface, so to keep water from getting into your esophagus. It's easier to do than you think. World travel. Now this is a big one for a lot of people. It's sort of big for us because the thing for us is we can dive out here at Lake Amistad and up at Balmorhea State Park and San Felipe Creek, and there are a lot of freshwater places that we can and have been diving. But we try to go to different places each time we go on a dive trip. Now, sometimes timing and money limits us, and we have to pick another place over again. For instance, we've been to Cozumel a couple or 3 times. And this year we'll be going back to Florida. And this will be actually our 3rd trip to Florida, I'm thinking. Yeah, I think it'll be our 3rd. We love diving there, but it's a unique experience. It's a different dive each time anyway. But ultimately, our plan is to dive a different place each time that we go. Ultimately, our big trip would be to go to Australia and dive out there. But this opens up a whole new reason to see the world. I mean, Tara and I, because we were in the Air Force and we were part of the Air Force Tops in Blue Performing Showcase, we got to see the world that way. We've been to Korea and the Philippines and Japan and the Netherlands and Iceland and Greenland and Turkey and Germany and England. Did I say England? And we've been to Panama and Honduras, and we've been to Alaska and Guam and Hawaii. We've been to all these different places, but that's all on land. And there's plenty to see and do there. I get that. But I tell you, going and adding this aspect to your world travel, it opens up so many opportunities for you. Increased confidence. Now, I got to tell you, there's nothing like that feeling you get after you've completed the course and now you're doing something that you maybe even just a couple of years before would never have imagined yourself doing. So the opportunity to pick up this new experience and go see these new places and be in charge of, have command of new skills and capabilities, just really is a big confidence builder for folks. So definitely a good reason to at least consider scuba diving. Communication skills. Now, obviously, unless you are spending $1,000 or more for an underwater communication system, you have to learn to communicate with strictly your hands. And in some cases, you can use facial expressions. But generally speaking, you're learning sign language, not the typical sign language that hearing impaired or deaf people have to use, but you're learning a standard skill set of communication underwater that actually can add to your communication skills outside of diving. You don't have to just use them while diving. So as a matter of fact, that's kind of ties back to the join a community and new experience. You'll find that if you're around other divers, you can throw them a signal and above, on the surface, just like you're going out somewhere and you can't hear each other, but you can throw them some of the communication signals that you typically use underwater, and you can you can carry on a pretty interesting conversation without saying an actual word. So it adds just another aspect of your capability. Ultimately, once you really get into diving and you don't just stop at certification, you actually go out and dive places, and you do these things that we've listed here. You look for the new experiences. You go to places where you can swim through history. You get connected to the community. You do the world travel. You enhance your communication skills. It is life-changing. I will never forget, my wife resisted scuba diving for a long time. And then when we went to Hawaii for a friend's wedding, her friend was very comfortable in the water, and we were at Hanauma Bay, which is it's a fantastic place for snorkeling because it's very shallow, very far out. All the fish are so used to people there, so they kind of can't come in, and so you can just snorkel on the surface and check out all the fish. So my wife got to experience snorkeling for the first time, and it was just a fantastic thing for her, but she was still resistant to diving. When she finally broke down, when we were getting ready for our first and my only cruise that was going to be in the Caribbean, of course, she finally broke down and got certified. Well, when we pulled into Grand Cayman, this was going to be her first saltwater dive. And we did 2 dives that day. And when we came up after that first one, her eyes were wide. She said it was like diving in an aquarium. And I'm like, yes, that is the reason why. That is the draw right there, is that's that experience. And so she's never looked back. Now she's an advanced diver. We have gone to all these places and seen all these wonderful, beautiful, historic sites. We've got great memories, pictures, video. It is life-changing. It's all of these things above, and this doesn't even fully encapsulate it, but all of these things are a part of how life-changing scuba diving is. And it's something that once you get certified, you're certified for life. So you don't just do it the one time. Now, the thing about one of the things on my bucket list is to go skydiving, but that's not something you can just do all the time. You can buy your own gear and go scuba diving anytime, anywhere that you can find water to do it in. You're only limited by your own imagination and opportunities to actually go experience it. Okay, so again, the title of the episode is "It's Not for Everyone," and it's not. There are people that I talk to that they kind of express interest. But then when I start asking some clarifying questions, I'm trying to gauge whether or not really they're ready for something like this. And so here are some considerations that you might think about if somebody's trying to pressure you or kind of trying hard to encourage you to scuba dive. So here are some things to consider. Now, this is a big one, I think, that you should always think about. Not comfortable in the water. I've had one student, actually 2 students who they did very well on the academics portion. That was not their weak spot. But once they got in the water, they were not comfortable. Swimming was a challenge. You have to be able to swim. Now, you don't have to be an Olympic swimmer. You can dog paddle the whole way for your distance swim. You got a 200-meter swim you have to do in a 10-minute tread water. You don't have to be a strong swimmer. My wife dog paddled, and that's fine. You're just getting from point A to point B, but you can't be fearful of the water. So if the going to the lake or going to a stream or going out to the ocean is something that makes you uncomfortable, that you don't dare do anything more than maybe swim around in a pool or go knee or waist deep in open water, and you're afraid to get under it, to swim under it, to hold your breath, to snorkel or whatever. If you're not comfortable in the water, then diving is probably not for you. And I'll say yet, because you can always get over that if it's a frame of mind. I tell my students that a huge part of scuba diving is psychological. Because there are skill sets that you have to learn to mitigate the dangers that exist in diving. You have to be in control of yourself, in control of your faculties, and be confident in what you're doing, that these skills will help you out. But you cannot be uncomfortable in the water and get into scuba diving. It sets you up psychologically to fail. Okay, here's another big one: health reasons. Generally, if you're fairly active, and again, you don't have to be doing a regular exercise routine. I mean, just your average person is healthy enough to go scuba diving. Now, there is a questionnaire that you have to fill out, and it's available on our website. There's a questionnaire you have to fill out that asks some very specific things that are important as a diver that you need to be able to answer no to, that you don't experience these problems or these challenges or issues or physical challenges, because these could be deal breakers as far as being able to dive. Now, if you answer yes to one or more of these questions, that doesn't mean necessarily diving is period, end of discussion, not for you. You can go get with your family doctor, preferably one who is familiar with or well-versed in dive medicine, and go over that questionnaire with them and say, okay, I had to answer yes to these 2 questions. in the doctor's estimation, in their prognosis or diagnosis, does the doctor feel that these things are at the level that would preclude you from being able to dive? So they can sign off and saying, yes, as far as medical reasons that you're okay to dive. But generally, you don't, the things that could get you into trouble is heart issues. Because here's the thing, you're diving under pressure. Your body is experiencing growing amounts of pressure as you go deeper, and so your heart is having to work harder, even though it's a very, very low impact exercise. Other than carrying gear, that can be high impact. You are placing your heart under a lot more stress, a workload, to pump blood and air and nutrients through your system under pressure. So having heart issues can be a challenge. Diabetes can be an issue because circulation is usually a problem. There are a number of other physical conditions that may preclude the ability to dive. If you have perforated eardrums, you don't want to. That would be a health reason that would preclude you from diving. So use the health, the medical checklist, the medical statement that we have, that Patty makes available, that we have available on our website. Use that at least as a guide to see if you are you need to maybe seek further doctor's recommendations. So health reasons could be a reason not to dive. Kind of tied to that is it can be strenuous. You will at times be carrying heavy gear till you get in the water. It's heavy, and depending on what kind of help you have, if you're diving with a reputable dive operation, they're probably going to be doing a lot of the workload for you. But ultimately, you still have to stand up and get to the water with your gear, and you have to get out of the water with your gear. So it can be very strenuous. And like I said, under pressure, your heart's working harder to feed your body what it needs to keep you alive. So it can be very strenuous. And the time that people are typically diving is during the summer. And so you're putting additional stresses on your body because of heat. And you may not even realize you're putting your body under those kind of heat stresses and other stresses until suddenly you're getting flush or fainting or something like that. But there are ways to mitigate that. Hydration, keeping yourself covered, proper sunblock, etc. Asking for assistance. Don't be so prideful that you're afraid to ask people to help you in or out of the water, because any self-respecting boat crew is going to be right there ready to help you, and any decent diver is going to be available to help you when you go diving, which is also why we stress that it is a buddy sport. Your buddy is supposed to be able to help you through all that. Okay, so here's another thing to consider. It is inherently dangerous because you are going into an environment that is foreign to your body. We only spend 9 months in a fluid environment. After that, it's all open air, buddy. So when you are scuba diving, you are completely surrounding yourself in an environment that for which only sea life is actually made. And so in order to mitigate those challenges of the inherently dangerous environment you're going into, we have a combination of equipment and skills to help you out. Now, the equipment, the buoyancy compensator, which for fish, they use a swim bladder, a thing called a swim bladder. Look it up. That's essentially their buoyancy compensator. And then while they have gills to extract air from, oxygen from the water, we have to carry our own supply, and it's limited. So that's why we have tanks. Now, if you have a rebreather system, it is kind of working like gills do, but not really. Where gills just simply pull oxygen from the H2O environment around them, what you're doing is you're scrubbing the carbon out of your exhaled breath and adding just a little bit of air back into it for volume and breathing it. So it's recirculating. That's why it's called a rebreather. Other than those kind of conditions, you've got a limited supply, and so then you have the skill sets that you learn as part of the training that help you mitigate the various kinds of things that can cause a problem, whether that's water in your mask or losing your mask or something failing with your gear where you would need to get an assist from your buddy and breathe off of his or her air. There are all these skills. I say all these skills. There are 20 basic skills that you need to learn in order to prepare you to mitigate those the potential dangers of scuba diving. But once you get those down, like I said, this is where the increased confidence comes in. Once you get those down, you don't really think about those because they become very easy and automatic for you. It's like when you drove for the first time. Generally speaking, you were probably a bit terrified, especially once you got out there amongst traffic and you're trying to balance all these tasks that you had to accomplish. Oh, when to signal, how if you're driving a standard, working the clutch and the brake and the gas and a signal, and am I watching the lights? Am I watching the traffic? Am I changing lanes properly? There's all of these things. Driving is inherently dangerous, but there's equipment and skills that you learn to mitigate those. The same is true with scuba diving. But ultimately, all that aside, it is inherently dangerous. And so if that intimidates you, then it's possible that scuba diving might not be for you. Now, this is definitely a showstopper right here, is equalization problems. Now, what do we mean by equalization problems? Well, if you've ever gone flying in a commercial jet, you've experienced this. Typically, when you're coming in for a landing, when you're descending to the airport, you feel the pressurization change, and your ears begin to feel pressure, and you feel like it's when you need to pop them. Now, if you have a difficulty with equalization, then diving is definitely not for you, because that's going to be a critical skill to keeping from damaging your eardrums. Now, when you're flying, you experience it in a very light manner, because typically commercial aircraft and some private aircraft get pressurized to the equivalent of about 10,000 feet once you get going, once you get to altitude or moving towards altitude. And then what happens is when you descend below that, then it starts equalizing to the same pressure as the ambient pressure of the outside of the aircraft. And so as you're descending past 10,000 feet, you're feeling additional pressure. Now, when you're in the air, when you're above sea level, that temperature, that pressure change is not very dramatic, because you literally have above you one atmosphere. Okay, at sea level, you're experiencing one atmosphere. As you go higher, you're feeling less than one atmosphere. When you descend, you're getting to a point where you then experience that full weight or the pressure of one atmosphere. When you go scuba diving, you get down to 33 feet. That's not very deep. Think of 33 feet high in the air. That 33 feet down, you're experiencing an additional atmosphere. In other words, you're now feeling twice the pressure on all of your body, including your ears, as you were at the surface. If you go down to 66 feet, you're feeling 3 times. When you go down to 99 feet, you're experiencing 4 atmospheres on your body. And so if you cannot equalize both going down and coming up, then it's possible that diving is not for you. You might also have job prohibitions, and this sort of ties to a little bit of equalization, but also ties to health reasons, as well as just the basic requirements for diving. Now, because when you're diving, that pressure is pushing inert gas like nitrogen into your tissues, and then it has to come out some way when you come to the surface, which is why you have to ascend at a very slow rate. Well, there are some jobs for which putting yourself under those kinds of pressures, even though you have the skills to deal with them, and they become kind of second nature for you the more you dive, there are some jobs that may have prohibitions against that. Now, I know a number of my students, a high percentage of my students are Air Force people, and a number of those are pilots. And so when they're going through pilot training here, they have very, very strict guidelines on such things as scuba diving, because they're not allowed to go diving within 24 hours of flying. And so they have to choose very strategically when they would dive if they're divers, or when they would go through a class, and which is why I have my class structured the way it is. So, but there are other jobs where pressure may be an impactor, or you're dealing with pressure chambers, or there's a number of job types that either because of the physical challenges that it places, the physical, what am I looking for? The physical changes your body goes through as a part of diving, or simply because the inherent dangers in diving make the job more concerned. So they set prohibitions. Maybe insurance prevents you from doing that if you're going to work for a certain company. So you may want to check out your job to make sure there's no prohibitions on that. That's definitely true if you're military. There's actually paperwork you have to fill out if you are involved in any kind of potentially dangerous activity, whether it's skydiving or four-wheeling, the ATVs, any number of those potentially dangerous or hazardous activities. There's paperwork you have to fill out. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to stop you necessarily, but they definitely want to be tracking that. But some jobs flat out might prohibit you. So check with your company to see if you're one of those. Now, you also may simply have other priorities. I mean, everybody's got lives. People with families, you may find that you just don't have the available time, or or even not mental faculty, but if you're dealing with a lot of family challenges, you don't want to be distracted when you're going through the course, for sure. And you definitely don't want to be distracted with things while you're diving. You need to have your head in the game so you can A, enjoy it, but B, so that the skills that you learned and that you hopefully are practicing on a regular basis are there for you. They're available for you, and that you're ready to grab a hold of and run with them if something happens and you need to engage those skills. So other priorities in your life, whether it's family or etc., could be a reason not to become a diver. And then last but not least, cost. Now, it's not free. It is one of the less expensive certified activities, hobbies, sports to get involved in, to start with. But obviously, if you're going to enjoy it to its fullest, it can be costly. Now, you've heard us talk many times before that you can get into scuba diving fairly inexpensively. It cost me about $1,500 to get into scuba diving when I got certified back in 2000. But now you can get a decent set of gear for $500. Now, the course itself, the cost of that varies around the world. Okay, so it totally depends on where you go, what kind of volume that they turn over, what kind of price you'll get for that. So ultimately, you're going to hopefully get your first set of gear. So you can spend anywhere from $500 to several $1,000s on your first set of gear, and that's okay. But again, it is a cost. And then once you've got your gear, what then? Well, as I tell my students, dive as frequently as you can. Now, if you have freshwater diving opportunities in your area, absolutely take advantage of those. Don't turn your nose up at a local stream that's only 10 feet deep. Don't turn your nose up at a local pond or lake for want of going to a nice, fancy Caribbean locale to dive. Don't turn your nose up at those places, because those are an opportunity to keep your skills up and to simply, again, new experience. Enjoy it. Figure out, oh, well, wow, I didn't know that there was this to see underwater at this lake or whatever. So, but as you stretch out, as you look to other places to go diving, that can get expensive. You're talking about airfare, you're talking about passports, you're talking about hotel and car reservations, and the actual dive trips themselves. Because usually, unless you go with an all-inclusive, you're having to pay a dive operation separately. You'll have tips that it's conventional that you would want to bring along as well. So even like just the cost of the dive trip itself, it will probably not include such things as tips. So again, it can get costly, and if that's not something that you're ready to consider to really fully take advantage of this new skill set that you have, this new sport that you've embraced, because you have other priorities, other challenges, etc., then maybe, just maybe, scuba diving might not be for you. All right, so as we're wrapping up here, just wanted to... why is this not coming up correctly? Dun, dun, dun. It's interesting. Where is it? Hate it when things don't show up the way when I click on them. Where is it? There it is. Again, these new changes really cause some problems. So let me bring up the administrivia. Now it's drawing it. There we go. Okay, as a reminder, if you do decide that the why nots are outweighed by the whys of why you should consider when you consider scuba diving, then and you're interested in taking the classes, I have the following classes set up for this year. So the first one will be May 26th to the 29th. The one following will be June 23rd through the 26th, July 28th through the 31st, followed by August 25th through the 28th, and then finally September 22nd through the 25th. And again, sign up no later than the first week of the month of that class. So if you want to take the May class, you need to sign up no later than the first week of May. So I get your study material, your student materials to you, so you can read, watch the video, complete the workbook in plenty of time for the actual when we gather together to go through the materials for the class, and then take you through the pool and open water portions. A Pet's Wish is still desperately needing donations of both money and people and time. Please look them up on Facebook. Matter of fact, I will call up their page so you can kind of see. Pet's Wish. All right. I'm going to give you a little screen region. So here we go. So you just look for A Pet's Wish, and you'll see this is their little icon here. And they post a number of things where they're needing some help. Their animals they're trying to adopt out, etc. So yeah, definitely check them out. They need money to help afford the vet bills and things like that they have to pay for. It ain't cheap what they do. But check them out, get in contact with them, find out how you can get donations of money or time. They're trying to get out of their current location and find a new location because they no longer are able to stay in the building that they're at. So they're going to need a lot of help as they move through this, as far as handling the animals, getting places for them. You could also foster. We were typically a 3 dachshund family. Then we actually adopted a Chiweenie from A Pet's Wish, and we are fostering I'm not sure what it is, part pit bull or something, but we are fostering one for them. And there are a number of folks that are fostering, and so that helps too, because it helps reduce the cost in-house for them. And you end up being a loving home, a nice, warm, comfortable place for one of these little sweethearts that just desperately wants the attention. I got to say, that was one of the things that when we were volunteering there that just kind of broke our heart, is they are so starved for companionship, connection with people. We've bred them that way. We've bred them to be man's best friend, and it's horrible when we cease to be their best friend. So please consider contacting and donating money and time to A Pet's Wish, or check them out on their website. They have links to that from their Facebook page as well. Just a reminder, we have the second, I think this is the second annual Women's Dive Day, is the 16th of July. So be on the lookout for that. There'll be a number of places around the world that will be helping celebrate that. So you can go to Patty, or you can just do a search for 2016 Women's Dive Day, and you'll find a number of events that day they'll be looking to recognize, honor, celebrate Women's Dive Day, because that's the fastest growing demographic for diving is women, and they've really, because of their the market responds, right? So because more women dive, they have really been driving a lot of changes and advancements in scuba diving, not just from, hey, let's make gear that actually fits comfortably for women, because they're built different, but also from a sense of style. I mean, the old days of the gray and black sea hunt, dive outfit, they're kind of gone. There's still some of it out there, but there's a lot of style out there. It's really driven from women getting into the sport in the numbers that they are. So July 16th this year is Women's Dive Day. Well, let's see. I think that's all the notes that I have. I didn't have any comments from anybody in the chat room or on the Facebook. But always you can catch this show. We upload it to our YouTube page, so you can catch the episodes afterward. And I always post it after it's uploaded. I post it to the Dive Club webpage as well as my own personal webpage, and I also have my scuba instruction webpage. I always post it in those places, and LinkedIn, etc. So you can always locate what the latest episode is. So if you ever want to go back and see some things that we talked about, or just want to reminisce, enjoy a little bit of nostalgia, I encourage you to do that. So that pretty much covers everything I've got for this week. And so enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy church if you go to church in the morning. I'm going to jump out here and see if I can see if there are any more updates on election status. And so that's it for me. And hopefully we'll see you next time, hopefully next week, on another exciting episode of This Guy Who Dives. See ya.